So yeah, this is another good illustration of what I mean, since I'm now looking through a list on the IMDb of the worst films of the 90s. And yeah, I mean, on this film you got some, in fairness, quite bad films, it seems. But yet again, if you're looking at the, sort of the average ratings of these films, you've got the number one worst film of the 90s round is Troll 2 with a 3. Then got Rockadoodle, 6.1. Then Hook, which I don't think should really be on this list. I quite like Hook. It's got an all-star cast: Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, etc. Robin Williams being good in it, great character art for the Robin Williams character, and Dustin Hoffman playing a brilliant, very camp and great Captain Hook, I thought. But anyway, they got The Magic Voyage, 3.4, The Last Action Hero, 6.4, Mr. Nanny, 3.8, Carnosaur, 3.6, Tammy and the T-Rex, 5. Then Junior, you know, that film with Arnold Schwarzenegger becoming pregnant, which I have seen. Actually, I can't remember anything about it, but it's Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, you know, I guess like twinning up on the basis of twins, you know, or maybe it was before twins, I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, a truly dreadful film indeed. 4.6. Baby's Day Out, 6.2. North, 4.5. Police Academy, Mission to Moscow, 3.6. A Troll in Central Park, 5.4. Judge Dredd, 5.6. Waterworld, the doomed Kevin Costner epic, 6.2. So already what we're seeing, I think, on this list is very much within a range of sort of 6-ish to about 3. Very rarely are we dipping below 3 on this list so far. Nothing in the 1s really, not much in the 2s. I'd say really an average of 4.7 or so. So really, when it comes to the worst films of the 90s, we're looking at something similar to a list of the worst films of the 70s. Because as I've already elaborated upon, in the 70s, yeah, like the worst films, like we're at a sort of a higher plateau, and then in the 80s, there's a nosedive into dreadful films, truly awful pieces of crap. And the good films in the 80s, very largely, I think, are bad films that people just think are good, or that for people alive or growing up in the 80s, they thought they were good, because compared to what else was being released, they were good, you know. And then there are obviously little bits here and there of cinematic genius, like Blade Runner, and like The Terminator, and things like that. But on this list of sort of terrible films of the 90s, they got one or two things that I think are really good, actually. Like, not many. But I thought Hook was good. I like that movie. Then Anaconda is on here, 4.8, which, you know what, I thought was really good. I thought it was a really good, scary film. So, yeah. But as a worst film of the 90s, fine, put it on there. What else? Oh, Godzilla's on here. Oh no, I like that. I thought that was good. And it's a 5.4. Like, granted, I don't think Godzilla, you know, is a truly good film. I don't think that really. I don't think it's genuinely a good film. It's just something I enjoyed growing up. But yeah, and Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace is on here, which, I mean, yeah, it does get a lot of hate, that film, and I think on reflection, certain elements of it, yeah, rightly so to some extent. But you know what? That trilogy did get me into Star Wars, so I can only hate on it to some extent, really. And Days Out at the bottom of the list. Okay, I do want to find more bad films from the 90s though, because this can't be all of them. Okay, there's another list here. So we've got If Lucy Fell, 4.9, Batman and Robin's there, it's largely the same story. The Bodyguard, 6.3. I don't remember anything about that film, but I have seen it. I'm not 100% certain it's very good at all, but The Mod Squad, 4.3, Rocky 5, 5.3, Spice World, 3.5, Armageddon, 6.7. You know what, Armageddon was a good film, There, I said it. It's a good film. And yeah, you know what? Actually, that is quite a good film, and that's 6.7. So it's not as though it's considered a terrible film by the standards of IMDb and public vote. And I mean, it's a big silly action movie, but oh, actually, no, it is a bad film. Yeah, no, I couldn't watch it now. No, I don't think I could watch it. But you know what? This is what I mean. Films from the 90s. It's like, yeah, bad, but not so bad. And then in terms of like brilliant 90s films, like, well, where do I begin with that? There's so many of them. Titanic, for fuck's sake. You know, that's probably the biggest grossing film, apart from Avatar, of all time. And then in the 2000s it comes along and gets trumped by Avatar, which, yeah, if nothing else, I'm not 100% certain I like Avatar all that much, but it's an undeniably stunning film to see in 3D in an IMAX. There's no question about like how visually breathtaking it was and beautiful. But yeah, I mean the story, it engaged in a bit too much Hollywood cinematic bump and shooty crashing spacecraft and explosions towards the end, I think. And I wanted to see something maybe a bit more poignant with it, possibly. And it sort of, yeah, it fell too much into like, a few Hollywood tropes. But yeah, these bad films of the 90s, they're nowhere near as bad as the bad films of the 80s. And I'm just going to now look up, I think, best films of the 90s. I imagine Titanic will probably be right at the top. It's near the top, yeah. Oh, look at all the things I've forgotten. Bloody hell. Like, okay, right, if you seriously think that the best films of the 80s can compete with the following list in terms of greatness in film, I just like asking maybe to reconsider a few things. Well, I've got Schindler's List, American Beauty, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, Braveheart, The Silence of the Lambs, Goodfellas, Unforgiven, Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan, LA Confidential, Life is Beautiful, Dances with Wolves, Fargo, The Green Mile, The Sixth Sense, which I don't personally like very much, The Matrix, The Usual Suspects, Fight Club, Seven, Good Will Hunting, The Insider, Secrets and Lies, The Remains of the Day, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, JFK, Beauty and the Beast, American History X, Leon, In the Name of the Father, Santang, I don't know what that is, it's a foreign film, Titanic, Shakespeare in Love, All About My Mother, Three Colours Red, Gungling Ji Xiao Nian Xiaoren Shijian. It's a... Is that Chinese or Japanese? Whatever it is, I haven't seen it. The English Patient, The Truman Show, As Good as It Gets, The Lion King, Central Station, Raise the Red Lantern, Character, Princess Mononoke, Train Spotting, Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, it's got Train Spotting at number 45 on that list. Reservoir Dogs at number 46. Like, if either of those films had been released in the 1980s, Reservoir Dogs or Train Spotting, they'd be in like the number 1 or 2 spots. That's the difference between those two decades. It's such a dramatic shift in terms of quality. Toy Story 47. At 47, The Fugitive, In the Heat of the Sun, and as Apna, it's Bollywood, I haven't seen it. Sense and Sensibility, Feston, Scent of a Woman, Children of Heaven, Heat, The Bandit, Being John Malkovich, Magnolia, Il Postino, Collier, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Farewell My Concubine, Before the Rain, Satya, Groundhog Day, The Big Lebowski, Huaozhe, again, another Chinese film I haven't seen, Journey of Hope, that's Turkish, The Piano, Elizabeth, Toy Story 2, The Sweet Hereafter, Ed Wood, Apollo 13, A Few Good Men, Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights is brilliant. The Thin Red Line, Run Lola Run, The Straight Story, Sling Blade, Godfather Part 3, 12 Monkeys. I think the good thing about the Godfather trilogy, if nothing else, is it doesn't allow itself to carry with it the taint of the 1980s. And it remains very much within like the sphere of the 70s and the 90s, which I think was very wise of Francis Ford Coppola to have done that. The Cider House Rules, Close to Eden, Awakenings, Underground, Sarah Frosch, Bollywood again, Casino, Utmolien Solstem, okay, The Elementary School, Before Sunrise, Close Up, Neon Genesis Evangelion, The End of Evangelion. That I believe is that's anime from Japan. Gods and Monsters, Breaking the Waves, Howard's End, Cyrano de Bergerac, Three Colours Blue, Quiz Show, Jurassic Park, and Jurassic Park at number 100. Yeah, and like again, if Jurassic Park had been released in the 1980s, it would probably be in the top 5 out of films from the 1980s. And yeah, like so we should begin actually and end that list with Steven Spielberg, who we got Schindler's List at the number 1 spot, and got Jurassic Park at the bottom. I think that sort of shows the range of what Steven Spielberg does as a director, isn't it? He does stuff that I find maybe a little bit tedious, actually, like Jurassic Park, and then amazing films like Schindler's List. So yeah, I mean, between the 80s and this, there is no fucking competition at all. It's like, what it is, it's like having like a boxing match between Mike Tyson and then sort of some coked up yuppie who like thinks he's all that and thinks he's gonna go like 9 rounds with Mike Tyson somehow because cocaine's done that to him. That's the difference there. But like all the 70s, like, you know, let's say Ali is the 70s. That's a good comparison, isn't it? Yeah. Like cinematically, the 90s is Mike Tyson. Cinematically, the 70s is Ali. And the 90s is someone who isn't even a boxer. I don't know enough about boxing really to make a comparison. It's such a... And also the 2010's, yeah, is the new 1980s. There haven't really been any good films. Well, there have been some good films, yeah, granted, in the 2010's. But worst films of the 2010's. Because, you know, obviously there are bad films in the 2000s as well. But in the 2010's, there were truly diabolically bad films. Like, what do we have straight away? 2011, The Human Centipede. And which I was looking forward to, actually. Like, I wanted to watch The Human Centipede because I was like, oh, very interesting concept, a human centipede, fantastic. Like, I see that, I want to see the centipede and whatnot. And but then I started watching it and I was like, oh god, like, and it's the acting is so unbelievably crap. I was like, I can't watch it. You know, like, I'm not gonna watch it just to see the human centipede. I still want to invest in the story. I still want the journey, you know, to the centipede. You've got an interesting concept, a human centipede, but it's wasted in a terrible film. You know, like if it could be a great film, you know, if everything else was on point, really, in it. I mean, think about like The Silence of the Lambs. You've got this insane weirdo in it who wants to make a woman's suit, you know, because he's always sort of wanted to be a woman, but he's too afraid to get the surgeries and what have you, or just to say, or just to like frankly have the courage to say that you don't need to have the surgeries to be transgender or this sort of thing, or that he's not really transgender or something very psychologically complicated on some level, and I don't know. But yeah, that's a horrific, scary, faintly ridiculous idea. But with Human Centipede, there's no real reason why I think it couldn't have been a Silence of the Lambs or something like that. But no, is that and that director Tom Six, stupid name director like McG, right? Yeah, just thought, oh, the Human Centipede, like the concept, that's good enough to carry the whole film. Like, no, it isn't, not at all. It's got to have a really scary villain. It's got to have like not just a bunch of dumb, good-looking people in it. It's got to have a protagonist who's either good-looking or not good-looking or whatever, but they've got to be a sort of Clarice Starling type, where they are smart also, and they're sort of like capable to some extent, and they're not just like a victim, if you see what I mean. Worst films of the 2010s. I bet the Human Centipede will be on here. So yeah, like I hated it. I hated the Human Centipede because it ruined something quite good. You know, I want to enjoy the centipede. I want to enjoy the build up to it. It's got to give me that journey, which it just didn't. And I won't sit through bad acting just to see a Human Centipede, because you can just watch the trailer if that's the case, and then you've seen it. Leap Year. Oh, hang on. All the bad films of the 2010s are actually quite good. Legion, Tooth Fairy, When in Rome, St. John of Las Vegas, Dear John. Oh, you know what this is? This is 2010s people. They're all millennials and like internet people, so they're all rating these films up on IMDb. Clash of the Titans. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't good enough though. Furry Vengeance, Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh, and all the remakes in the 2010s. Oh, and the movies of things that didn't need to be movies, like Sex and the City. Jonah Hex, Grown Ups, Love Ranch, Last Airbender. Fred the movie! Yeah, 1.9. I think deservedly so. Cats and Dogs, Revenge of Kitty Galore. But Death and Life of Charlie St. Cloud, 6.4. Vampires suck. Well, I suppose that's literally the truth, isn't it? Resident Evil, Afterlife. Did there really need to be yet another Resident Evil film? But yeah, I mean, they're not faring as badly as the 80s so far on this. The Nutcracker, Warriors Way, The Tourist. That was like, rarest of things, a bad Johnny Depp film. Unless we're counting Pirates of the Caribbean, which I'm not actually. But yeah, I have a suspicion actually that the Human Centipede isn't on this list. And I think that they're hiding the true nature of the 2010s by ignoring films like The Human Centipede on this list. We're nearly at the bottom. 85, Green Lantern, 86, Zookeeper, Columbiana, The Change Up, Conan the Barbarian, Spy Kids, Courageous, and there's nothing on here like the Angry Birds movie or the Emoji movie, anything like that. And it's hiding the truth. Oh no, it's 1 out of 426. Oh, we're still in, like, we're not at the bottom of the shit heap yet by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't realise that. Oh yeah, The Human Centipede 2. Yeah, the unlikely sequel, 3.8. That might be charitable. Then again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But I think what that implies, though, is that The Human Centipede 2 is better than The Human Centipede 1, which is unusual for a sequel. And Jack and Jill, Alvin and the Chipmunks, again, like things that did not need to be films. The Darkest Hour, Dylan Dog, Dead of Night. Wow. The Devil Inside, Underworld Awakening. I like the Underworld franchise, but there can't be too many of them. I think you'd ruin it. The Wicker Tree. Is that a sequel to The Wicker Man? Oh. The Vow. Ghost Rider. Acts of Valor. Gone. Oh, you know what? You know what I reckon also, as I get towards, like, further into the 2010s, the films get worse. That's another thing that happens, I'm pretty certain. And also just look at the sheer volume of films getting produced. The Raven. Like, are they trying to compete with The Crow? Like, yeah, it's like, oh, something, oh, Edgar Allan Poe's, oh, and it inspires murders, what, like Red Dragon and with those William Blake chings? Yeah, like that. No. Whatever, how original. Chernobyl Diaries, Piranha 3. Oh, and then there's things like The Meg and Sharknado. That'll be on this list somewhere. At this point, we're very much still into, yeah, all these. 2012, 2012, 2012, 2012, 2011. We're Taken 2. Alex Cross, 2012, 2012. Oh, the really awful ones, they're hidden. Yeah, that. Oh. 2012, 2013, remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yet again. Which is not necessary at all. Because there was a remake. And no, it was not as good as the original. But it was okay-ish. It was reasonably good, actually, I thought. But it was good enough. Hanson, 2013, still we're at the beginning of the decade. Holy, alright, I'm going to try and skip all the way to the back and work backwards. Hangover Part 3, 2013. After Earth, The Smurfs, there's some inklings of bad films already, I think. Really bad films. Steve Jobs, that was a bad film, but it wasn't actually as bad as the Danny Boyle Steve Jobs film, unfortunately, which was unbelievably boring and unnecessary, I thought. Yeah, again, unnecessary. Totally unnecessary. And Danny Boyle doing that, frankly, rarest of things for that director and making a dud of a film, a crap film by Danny Boyle. What a shame. But Planes, oh god. And again, we're still relatively near the beginning of the decade. Now we're 2013. So, yeah. Oh no, but it's getting there, getting towards 2014, or maybe it is ranked by year. Let's see what it is ranked by a sec. Sort of a list order. I'm going to go by IMDb rating. I go low to high. It's put the best ones at the top. That's what I didn't want to happen. Oh no, there are good films that were towards the end of the decade, apparently. But I don't want 426 films. Again, yeah, they're hiding the cinematic crimes of this decade under sort of like a nicely iced veneer of not dreadful but not particularly great films. Suicide Squad got 6 on here. That was incredibly lucky, but it got 6. Yeah, I don't think it deserved 6 at all. I think it deserved more like 3. Come on, take me to the back of the list. Come on. Come on, I want to see the scum like at the bottom of the level of silt in which the freaky fish at the bottom of the sea lurk. That's what I want. I want the bottom of the trench, the bottom of the Mariana Trench. And like there'll be one or two people growing up in this decade who will grow up loving the Emoji Movie and that sort of shit, and I'll grow up loving the Angry Birds movie. But I loved it. And like, well, that's because you lack taste. Hoodwink 2, Hood versus Evil. Ooh, I bet that's terrible. Oh, 50 Shades Darker, 2017, 4.6. I think that probably... You know, I reckon it's got its own sort of coterie of fans among sort of like repressed middle-aged women in the States. That's what I reckon is bumping up the scores on those films. Come on. Yoga Hosers. I started watching that for some reason by mistake, and I stopped watching it pretty quickly after I started watching it. Kevin Smith isn't supposed to do bad films, but then again, that one exists, so I suppose I'm wrong. I mean, I like all of the things he's done, except that one, and I'm not going to watch that film, was it The Walrus or something? That's a sort of Human Centipede rip-off, it seems, and I don't want to watch it. But there's like Red State, which is brilliant, and obviously Clerks and Dogma and all those great movies. But yeah, I don't know why I began watching Yoga Hose. I think I was expecting it to be something other than it was. I get a good film. Okay, here we go. Yeah, now we're more into... Oh, here we go. There's the Emoji Movie, 3.3. Charitable, I thought. Left Behind, Standing Ovation. The Oogie Loves. Oh. Saving Christmas, 1.4. And that is 2014, that is in the first half of the decade. Fred Movie, 1.9. Left Behind. But then again, like these actually, they're not so consistently bad as the 80s. But you know what I reckon it is? I reckon it is children of this decade voting it up on IMDb. And they say, you know what, I liked it, it's getting hated on, but yeah, 10. It's like, you don't know what you're fucking talking about. Scary Movie 5. Oh, I like those films, but there didn't need to be a fifth one. And you know what I'm not seeing on this one? I'm not seeing Sharknado. So yeah, I didn't see any Sharknadoes on that list, but then again, those are made for TV movies. But then again, in fairness, Fred is a made for TV movie, and that appeared on that list. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think about this list of 426 crap films from the 2010's, which seems to be trying to promote even films among those films that weren't as bad as some of the films that got released back then. And it's an exhaustive list, frankly, of dreadful films. But I think what it's trying to do is trying to add in certain amounts of films which may have been middling or mediocre to try and bring up their average and try and distort the statistics in some way, rather than just being honest. Because yeah, Sharknado not on there, The Meg not on there, the rest of the Human Centipede franchise conspicuously absent from that list. The Walrus Kevin Smith film wasn't on there, which I suspect was really one of the biggest stinkers of that decade. And like really, when it comes to the 2010s, it is such a mark of what that decade would try and do. You know, it would try and distort the truth when it comes to something like its performance at film and its contribution to culture. It would, yeah, it would. It would lie, it would cover things up, it would distort facts and statistics. You know, this has been very characteristic of this decade. You know, engaging in like, frankly totalitarian shit. You know, like the deplatforming and the censoring and the only allowing sort of sanitized opinion to bubble to the surface. And really, I think if you're going to entertain sort of only sanitized opinion and only rhetoric which you deem acceptable or whatever, you know, within excesses of political correctness, you know, or like an overly sort of knee-jerk reaction to certain like elements of bigotry within society or whatnot, like you run the risk of falling into totalitarianism, and you run the risk of falling into totalitarianism. But also, I think more importantly, you end up producing a cultural output that consists of only sanitized opinion and so on. So it ends up having very little value, I feel, really in the long term, and it's produces nothing of any real significance and lasting worth and merit. Because I find, certainly in the sciences, all the biggest new ideas that come out, really, they tend to be the most controversial. They tend to really either divide people or they get rejected outright to begin with. And yet, this thing, I think, within this list of 426 movies on IMDb of the worst films of the 2010s, yet they're really trying to distort the statistics, and they're really trying to cover up and hide the real cinematic crimes of that decade. While, there's a nod to the Human Centipede franchise, but Human Centipedes 1 and 3 are missing, aren't they? And the Meg is missing, and that should be on that list. That was a truly dreadful film. And, a few others, and lots more, I think, really. And, the Angry Birds movie and the Emoji movie, those are on that list, because really they have to be, I think. Because, those are, big enough box office. Or they received enough publicity at the time that they have to incorporate them into the list. And it strikes me as being every single thing that was wrong with that decade. The censoring, the deplatforming, the up-jump bigots from two extremes of the political spectrum. The alt-right and the radical left, the feminazis and the antifas versus the alt-right and the Proud Boys, and all this bullshit, and both sides being as bad as one another, and sort of moderates, where most people did remain moderate. I think I managed to remain moderate while sort of vacillating at times, to the extremes of the moderates end of the spectrum, dipping my toe in but never really fully committing to, say, the alt-right or the radical left or anything, and trying to sort of remain in the middle of it all, while it's all like a weird hurricane of ideology swirling around you. And it's such remarkable what that little evil cunt of a decade would do. And what did it finish it off with? COVID-19. Yeah, COVID-19. The final gift to humanity of the 2010's. That's exactly what that decade would do as well. The last act of it, in December or November, whenever you choose to start recording COVID deaths, it would go like this to the following decade. You're not going to be better than we are. We were fantastic. Like that. It would do that. Of course it would. It would end it by committing an atrocity. By killing 2.3 million people or so at this count. Yeah, it'd do that. Just after everything, after the stupid bearded hipsters and their stupid clothes and their stupid haircuts and stupid beards, and how vapid men became, and how sort of radicalized women became by third wave feminism and what have you, and the style's atrocious. The films were awful. I think literature like took a bit of a bad turn, was a bit sort of vapid and crap. Music, I don't know really. Like, yeah, there's good music in it, but then again, like with the 80s, there was great music in the 80s. I think again, when it comes to music, because so much music gets produced, I think usually the good stuff always does boil up to the top, you know. And it's not as if there's more or less music, particularly, I don't think, being produced in any given decade, but that would be relative to population. But yeah, it's that evil little scumbag of a decade, the 2010s. Everything just was going quite well in the 2000s. So, you know, a natural following on from sort of 90s culture. In the 90s as a counterculture, you got the emergence of goths. Then that gets watered down into emos, sort of. And it was a little annoying, but still kind of cool. And then that transforms, not really via a logical synthesis at all, into hipsters. So I don't think there's a clear progression from emo to hipster. But like, what hipsterdom is it dredges up something from, ooh, the 50s, ooh, we're hipsters, like they were in the 50s and so on, in Greenwich Village and what have you, and all those like Allen Ginsberg types, who started out hipsters and became hippies, ultimately, when the 60s dawned. And that's all that, and one thing is like, it's retro, hence not original, for one thing. It's like a sort of neo-hipster, or like a neo-50s cultural movement, which, you know, was lacking crucially in originality. And I think it sort of, like, 80s was the era of punk, at least. And like the punk ethos actually really came out of the 70s, I think, more. But at least it was original, you know. At least it had that going for it. But, yeah. The last decade, by the way, the 2010s, was scary also. It was atrocious. It was so bad. Like, there's like everything going on with Trump in America and Brexit in Europe. Thinking like we're going to leave the EU without a fucking deal. Jesus Christ. Like, well, that's the energy gone, that's food gone. What the fuck is going to happen? You know, and yeah, the right wing being more sort of like shouty and fist waving and flag waving as ever about Brexit. The Tories getting voted in again in 2015 and worsening austerity and proposing an EU referendum. You know, after the betrayal of tuition fees and all that sort of stuff. And it's gone like this. And now we've got Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. I never thought I'd say those fucking words. Just, again, one of the final gifts of the tweenies. Now we've got this to deal with. Wonderful. You know what I mean? I've got him for, what, 3 years? Ooh! I think we need to find a way to get rid of him. I'd impeach him. I reckon he's impeachable on something or other. Can't we get him on something? You know, was he something like business dealing, tax dodging, or embezzlement, or whatever it could have been? I don't know, just something. And involvement in COVID, I think very possibly. Very, very possibly. Considering how it lines up with the election. So yeah, like, really, I'd have been a centrist throughout the 2010s, since I started to hate the left more than I'd ever hated them before. I started to hate the right more than I'd ever hated them before. And it's like, but then again, like I would have always said that I'm centre-left. So was a centre-left person in the 2010s vote. Who does the centre-left person in the 2010s vote for? They vote for Corbyn as opposed to Boris. And I did. And that's, frankly, he's a radical leftist. Or a more radical leftist. But, you know, in the interest of not doing what a hell of a lot of people in my generation do, and they boycott the vote altogether, a la sort of the Russell Brand interpretation of politics, which I would not recommend. because people had to die for your right to vote in the First World War. And a hell of a lot of people had to campaign for decades in order to receive the vote for ordinary working people. So yeah, I don't think it's a particularly great movement for any kind of social or political justice, just to say that we'll boycott politics entirely. I don't think you can be mature about it quite and do that. But I still like Corbyn. I still think he's more like a Bernie Sanders figure for Britain. But then again, do I like Keir Starmer more? I don't know. What Keir Starmer is, he's more electable than Corbyn. He's younger, he has more of a sort of academic pedigree than Corbyn. Starmer, he is a human rights barrister, one of our best. And yeah, he does have that sort of very, high-flying legal pedigree to him, which is pretty good for politicians. And considering who's got to go up against, QC or Queen's Counsel, human rights barrister versus a former editor of the Time or the Sunday Times. Yeah, who do you think's like the intellectual superior there? It is Keir Starmer. It is not Boris. Boris, the hooray from Eton, who got 2 A's and a B at Oxford, got into Oxford's easiest course, and graduated with, I think, what was it, a 2-2? Or did he get a 2-1? In any case, it matters little, since he is Boris Johnson after all. Heir of, of an aristocratic line, and so on. And that was one of the final gifts that the 2010's gave us. Boris Johnson as Prime fucking Minister. Woo! And COVID. If that decade were a person, I would say this sort of thing to her. Why don't you go walk into the sea? Why don't you go throw yourself in the sea? How about that? The 2010's. And just think about how miserable and pathetic and pretentious and childish and shallow, superficial and sort of know-it-all-ish you were, and how crap you were generally speaking, how overzealous, how vain, how arrogant, how much of a cunt, how spoiled and childish, and spoiled in every conceivable way, spoiled for information, yet you enclose yourself in a stupid little echo chamber where you only read certain feminist or blogs or whatever it is, and you don't read proper books also, and just the internet and just YouTube videos, and you enclose yourself into this sort of echo chamber where you just receive people of a certain form of sanitized opinion and hate everybody else who reads anything different to you, and often justifiably, because they're doing exactly the same thing by enclosing themselves in their own little echo chambers where, again, they're only reading certain blogs, certain YouTube videos, not reading proper books, and not engaging in proper learning, but just imbibe a hell of a lot of shitty, stilted, right/left-wing, right and or left-wing rhetoric from chat rooms and blogs and internet forums and YouTube, and that's it. And I hate you, the 2010's. And you're crap. You're crap, and you deserve to die, but I think you deserve to be remembered so that history doesn't repeat itself with more decades that stink of the feculent human dirt that you are as a decade. Thank you very much. I think that's all I have to say about it. Bye.